Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition. Easton Freeze in for Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group, of course. Jump into the comments. Eventually, I'm going to because you guys are so good in the comments, Easton. They're so great that a lot of times we just kind of stream of consciousness with the conversation with those guys. Maybe one day we'll do a mailbag section where you just pepper Zach with questions that are
you got to keep that in the back pocket for when things you just have nothing to talk about, because it's a go-to.
Well, I've been doing sports talk radio for 20 years, and if you have nothing to talk about in this world of sports year round, then you are just not good at your job. So there you go. Derek, how are you, sir? Good to see you. In fact, I love June and July because I get to be creative. It's called being creative, because today not a lot of creativity. Not a lot of creativity from we have to talk about the Bucs game standpoint.
The show writes itself, right? Yep.
What is creative is how we're going to talk about the Bucs game, because I have one major issue with this football team, and because Zach's not here to argue with me, I'm going to present a case to you that is a fallacy about this entire Tennessee Titans football team that I think Zach has been perpetrating the propaganda upon this audience, for which he cannot defend himself today. So we're going to do that today on the show. We're going to a quick little look around the AFC South, because I think the AFC South is way more interesting than I think anybody anticipated. We got, a couple of Georgia and Alabama. Could they be upset this weekend? And then, of course, Tennessee, Missouri. So we'll get to some of that later on. But we obviously will start with the Bucs matchup and Will Levis. And how are we going to define what progress looks like for Will Levis each week that we go along? And so what is it from the Pittsburgh game? Extra time to prepare. What is it about the matchup with the Bucs that he can take advantage of? What are the things he needs to work on? I want to define the progress we want to see from the young quarterback over the course of the next 8 weeks, because he has been named the starter. And yes, everyone can rest easy and take a deep breath. Your worst nightmares are not true. Will Levis is your starting quarterback, Easton.
And we did, in fact, say that on our Monday show, which I'm back again. Latest reports indicate that Zach is adrift at sea, perhaps the latest victim of the Bermuda Triangle. I don't know if we're ever going to hear from him again. So
How many people would be upset about that?
Some would. A very polarizing topic indeed. I think some would be ecstatic. I think some would be sad. But I am here.
It would get clicks.
It would get clicks. It would get clicks. So Zach, if you want to lay your life down for the social grind, go for it.
Well, I'm not going to ask him to die per se. But I'm sure he wouldn't. I'm sure he wouldn't be all that upset if he ended up on a deserted island,
that's what I was going to say,
smoker and a barrel of rum for the rest of his life. He'd probably be okay with that, as long as he can get the misses down there somehow, of course. So
right, exactly. But I'm here in his stead today talking about the Titans, and I'm curious what your pushback on whatever he's been perpetrating is. I feel like in his honor, I need to get at least whatever it is. I need to get at least one. Give me a fucking break in there. Whatever the topic is.
There you go.
Because that's typically his response. So I'm curious about that. And then, this is an interesting football game. And the thing I'm most interested about talking with you today is the AFC South, because like you said, this is a fascinating division. I think that it's only going to get more fascinating the next couple of years. Yep. And that's super exciting. It's a good time to be in the AFC South.
I also want to not clarify, but sort of ask some clarifying questions about our topic on Monday, which involved Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. There's been a little bit, not any more news about this, but you posted some sort of evolving thoughts as you've been thinking about it. So I'll get to that in a second. Sinkers Beverages, of course, our title sponsor, along with the Kingston Group. You guys know who they are, so go support good local business. What Nashville is all about, as much as we change, as much as we evolve, and as many billions of dollars as we spend on stadiums, what Nashville has always been about since I moved here when I was a freshman in high school in 1996 is about supporting each other in our community. And you do that by going to shop at local restaurants. You do that to using local shops like the Kingston Group to build your house or to help you with projects and problems around your house, buying and selling homes. You do that by shopping at Sinkers Beverages and listening to independent content like 440 Sports, like Broadway Sports Media, the Hot Read podcast, of course, from Easton Freeze. So shop at Sinkers, shop at the Kingston Group, support local business, let the community work together to help all of us be better off. That's the way it works. That's the way Nashville's always been.
Bingo.
And I don't think it's going to change. As many tax breaks as we give Oracle, we still will support Sinkers Beverages in the Kingston Group. I promise.
Okay, I like it.
So, okay. So my first question just about the Vrabel topic, and I feel like I kind of need to clarify something. Number one is, has your opinion of our conversation evolved much at all. You kind of tweeted about it a little bit on twitter.com. You can follow me at Braden Gall on twitter.com. Which that cannot argue with me on because it's still twitter.com. How do you have, has anything changed in your opinion now that Robert Kraft might be closer to firing Bill Belichick than we thought?
My opinion has changed twice. And it's been a circle. So I'm back where I started. My opinion coming into Monday's show was that of course they would like to hire him. Of course, Kraft would see Vrabel as a nice guy to replace Belichick, but I don't think the Titans would be interested. Then we had our conversation. You made a pretty compelling argument for why the Titans would need to consider it, and why it might make the most sense for them as an evolving franchise. And then you had me thinking, and I basically ended that conversation on Monday saying, I don't know anymore. You've made me bad at my job on this topic because I don't have an opinion on this anymore. Let me marinate on it. And then I marinated on it. I tweeted about it before we heard from Vrabel at that press conference about Levis being the starter. And then we had that press conference where all of the fears that folks had that we discussed on Monday were laid to rest. Rationality and logic won out. And the Titans are an organization that I think a lot of people are suddenly at ease with and excited about. And I'm back to where I started, looking at this team, looking at Mike Vrabel, who finally publicly, because I'm somebody that I think behind the scenes, he's absolutely been saying the past 2 weeks, boys, we might have something here with this Will Levis guy. Like the whole, say what?
I don't know how you can't.
Exactly. He's not dumb. He knows what he sees. And so that's something where I think a lot of fans don't realize or forget to realize that what is said by Mike Vrabel at the podium is not representative of how he feels. And so just because he's not absolutely slurping Will Levis at the podium every time we bring him up does not mean that he hates Will Levis. And he did finally show a little bit of talking about how there's clearly something there with this guy. And the only way you can learn is by going out there and doing it. All the things that we've been saying, all the things that are obvious to him, who again he's not a dumb man. He's a very smart football mind. And so that's something where
he's a very smart, motivational, psychological leader of humans.
Yes.
And his MO has always been, when you're having a bad time, build you up, and when you're having a great time, keep you grounded, which is basic 101 human leadership. So
yeah, and it's sports psychology 101. You hear about the very greatest athletes in any sport talk about how staying at neutral is key from a mentality standpoint. So that's what Vrabel tries to do with his players. Absolutely. But back to the point of
trust the process.
Trust the process. But back to the point of the coaching remarks from New England and out of the Boston Globe. I'm back to where I think Vrabel has to look at this franchise. Got a new GM that, despite what you have said in the past, I'm not discrediting your comments. I think that they're going to be a nice tandem going forward. I think that Vrabel likes the amount of control he has in this organization. And pretty objectively, this Titans team right now is in a much better spot organizationally from a total franchise point of view than New England is. I'm not sure why he would ever want to go there, and I'm not sure why the Titans organization would want to trade him there.
Well, I number one, I think ever suggesting that anyone knows what makes anybody tick, I think is a false. I do it with all the time with college football jobs, and I go, Tennessee versus Mississippi State. Tennessee's clearly better. Why would you ever not take the Tennessee job? And you just don't know what makes a guy tick.
It's true.
Sometimes the wife wants to be on the West Coast, or sometimes the kids want to be here, or sometimes when I'm up late at night, I dream about this and not that. And you never know. So I think any of us pretending to know what Mike Vrabel will or won't want today, next year, 2 years from now, I think is ridiculous, because you just never know what makes a guy tick. I don't think you can apply a blanket sort of philosophical coaching and football evaluation to everybody and say it applies to everybody, because it just doesn't. Like, again, a guy left the Wisconsin job for Utah State. Like, what? Like, Wisconsin's in the Big Ten. They paid $8 million. Utah State's in the Mountain West. Like, that's a huge step down. But he wanted to be out there because his wife wanted to be out there, and they wanted to be on the West Coast with their family. So, Matt
Rule was going to be paid a lot of money every year to do nothing, and then decided he wanted to go coach a Nebraska team.
You never know what makes a guy tick. So, and I want to kind of clarify what I was saying. I personally don't think the Titans should do it. His contract does run out at some point. So if he wants to just walk away, I think it's 4 years from now, he can just walk away if he wanted to. My issue is that if Mike Vrabel wanted this, and the Patriots wanted it, the Titans, would be in a position of leverage to maximize his value during this window with which he is under contract. So in that sense, you're not doing your job if you don't think about it, if you don't analyze it, do your SWOT, and get the best possible offer, conduct business like you would be doing if you were thinking about actually doing it. I don't think that's, like, in a perfect world, I think Mike Vrabel should be the head coach for the Titans for as long as he wants to be. And you keep him here as long as possible. And with a roster that he clearly knows how to manage and lead, but now with a young quarterback who, frankly, the last thing you want to do is like upend the entire organization.
Yeah.
You kind of already, like, you've got the front office established who drafted him. Like, he came in after all the change. Like, right now he only knows what's around him. And so I think keeping it stable for him is critical. I just want to clarify my personal opinion versus what I think may happen or what could be going through people's heads. And I just, I do not want to see it happen. I think it would be a bad move.
Right.
Is there a time 2 years from now when Mike Vrabel says, look, I'm really interested in this job behind closed doors? Robert Kraft is a Hall of Famer and makes Hall of Fame decisions, and he wants to hire Mike Vrabel, bring him back home, the patron's son. And Amy Adams Strunk says, okay, I'll make that happen, but I've got to bend him over a barrel to get whatever I want out of this.
Right.
Because I can say no. I can say no. That's kind of where I was coming from with that. And I could see Mike Vrabel wanting to be in New England. I could see that absolutely happening in the next year or two, whatever. A lot of that depends on how good number 8 is.
A big part of that. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Sinkers Beverages, Kingster Group. Appreciate it. So there you go. That was, I wanted to ask about that just sort of after a couple of days of thinking about it. Had you changed your opinion? And you're back to the beginning, which is totally fine. And I want to be very clear on my opinion, which is I think it would be one of the worst things possible is to get rid of Mike Vrabel right now today. It doesn't mean you might not be forced into that situation down the road. That's all. And I do think the tension that happens behind the scenes, I've said this multiple times, between the front office and the coaching staff is potentially a very good thing. You want there to be a natural inherent tension there. The question is, can they learn to work and maximize each other over time? And I think they absolutely can. Like, I'm not, my sort of, thoughts on that situation are just like, in this moment, they're working things out, trying to figure it out. And I think they absolutely, I think they're grown adult men. I think they can figure it out. So, okay. How do we define success? I want to be very broad and give you like free space to sort of talk through what you think this is. How should we define progress? The Titans are 3-5, coming off a tough game against Pittsburgh, but we're in that game. They've got extra time to prepare for Tampa Bay, a team that has some very specific strengths and weaknesses. How would you define, for Will Levis specifically, how would you define progress week 1 to week 2, now to his 3rd game as a starting quarterback for the Titans?
Just touchdowns. I think all that matters is touchdowns. If he scores touchdowns, he's good. If he doesn't, he's bad, is all that really there is to go into that evaluation. Yeah, no. It's a good question. It is one that is, a lot is going. I had somebody tweet me a couple of days ago because I was highlighting how we're going to get a lot of really cool looks at this draft class against each other because the AFC South is playing the NFC South, and 3 of the rookies are in the AFC South. So you're going to get 2 CJ Strouds versus Will Levis games. You're going to get a Bryce Young versus Will Levis game here in a couple of weeks. That's going to be cool to compare those 2 guys on the same screen in the same game. I had somebody respond to that, basically saying, well, all you'll be able to garner from it is if he wins. If he wins, then you know who the better player is, which is, the ultimate quarterback. Wins are a stat, not actually a stat. People, wins are not a quarterback stat.
It seems awfully reductive, but
right. It is awfully reductive. And
to be, I want you to continue, but to be clear, all those rookies also sort of measured against what is now the benchmark in the division at the position, which is Trevor Lawrence. Yes. Again, if you think he's elite or not is irrelevant. Right now, he is the benchmark in the division at that position.
Yeah, no, 100% he is. And I've always been higher on Trevor than most Titans fans, but so defining success for Will, it strangely for me starts with wanting to see him make some massive mistakes. And so like, I don't
like, how do I know he's making progress if he's making a bunch of mistakes?
Well, so let me try to land this plane, right? I don't like when you're on the extremes of either end of the spectrum for a young or a rookie quarterback, where you put a guy like Brock Purdy on a San Francisco team, and he's got every weapon imaginable. He's got great protection. He's got incredible scheme, and he's able to really, if he wants to, just operate as the puppet of Kyle Shanahan and press the right buttons and just not make dramatic mistakes out of structure.
Versus Bryce Young.
That's where I was going. Exactly. Versus a Bryce Young or there are plenty of horrible first or second overall quarterback situations in the recent past that you can point to where it's just impossible. I mean, look at Trevor with Urban Meyer for that first season, right? You hate that because, again, you can watch the tape and you can see the traits and whatnot, and like you can point and be that guy who's like the tape grinder and like the football nerd who you're like, actually, Bryce Young's been playing pretty well. And folks have been saying that. And a lot of fans, you look at the record and look at the numbers, are like, no, he hasn't. I hate both ends of that spectrum. So I think this Titans team is actually really well constructed to be mediocre and flawed enough.
Hooray!
for in a weird way, it's good news for Will Levis because he's going to be put in situations to win games. This Titans team absolutely can and will win some games the rest of the season. They may win a lot of games. If Will Levis is continuing to play at a really high level and is ultimately a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill had been for the first 6 weeks, I don't think the playoffs are out of the realm of possibility for this team. Unlikely at this point. Sure, you got an uphill climb. You're 14th in the conference. You got to win some games and string together wins, and you got to win on the road first and foremost. But
there's people don't realize this, and I didn't even realize this. There's only one team in the AFC with a worse record.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that is because the AFC is a total cluster, and there are a ton of 3-5, 4-4, 5-3 teams. And that'll all
most of the AFC South.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So that's why to land that plane, I want to see him make some mistakes. I want to see him have to play from down 2 touchdowns in the second half and see how he operates when a less mature quarterback might press or make some decisions that are too aggressive. I want to see him try to make a comeback drive in the fourth quarter, which we saw on Thursday Night Football against the Steelers. I also want to see him operate from ahead. I guess what I'm saying is I want him to be put in as many different case study situations as humanly possible so that he can get as much experience as possible to be primed for what we're working towards here, the 2024 season.
I think ultimately, like, the really, really easy answer on how to define Will Levis is sort of tied to like the advanced metrics, probably.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be like yards per attempt and DVOA and some of the more basic ones, completion percentage or quarterback rating, but like anything that sort of defines efficiency, I think that's the easiest answer. But I think we can, anyone can say like, well, yeah, but if he goes 17 of 22 for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, like obviously that's progress. We define that as progress. And to your point, like touchdowns, man, throw some fucking touchdowns. Like, yes, that is progress. And we acknowledge that. But I think the nuances of the game, which I think, frankly, to your point, which I think it takes some nuance to understand your point, which I agree with, which is let's see how many different types of situations he can experience to then be able to call on those experiences in the future when he's put back in those situations. Like, frankly, he should be better. This is how, again, this is where I think the more nuanced answer comes back because he has now experienced, to your exact point, he has now experienced 2 very different extremes. He's experienced a bunch of big play touchdowns and a win. And he's experienced a road game in which he was on his ass or about to be on his ass the entire game. And so progress for me is handling those 2 things and being better, especially under pressure, because now it appears that maybe even Daniel Brunskill won't be available. We don't know. Right. So the offensive line conversation we had on Monday is now probably definitely including Andre Dillard, which is awesome.
Woohoo!
So Radens might be in at guard. Who knows? We don't know. But I think the point is defining progress is taking those moments of adversity and showing growth within those moments of adversity. And in particular with Pittsburgh, to me, is learning how to protect himself a little bit better. Like, he's a tough dude. He's Captain America, like Mike Herndon said. And like, he's all these things. He's a big physical transformer. Like, but it is what it is. But like, also he took a lot of hits.
Braden, it's Josh Allen. And I hate how direct the comparison has been to Josh Allen so far with Will Levis. but that's what it is, right? Like the fact that they are very similar athletes, the fact that we were at first talking about how like, okay, the decision making, the mechanics, the footwork, like those need to be improved. He's got a cannon of an arm. He can push the ball down the field. Okay, now he comes in, he shows you that he's progressed in some things. And now, okay, he's a big guy, and you respect the grit, you respect the balls on the guy, but you got to protect yourself better. Like it's step by step what we've talked about with Josh Allen in his career, which is a good thing, right? Because Josh Allen's a very good quarterback, but that's what it is. So there's something you can learn from right there. A guy that's ahead of you in that way.
And I think while Josh Allen is probably the most fair and most apt comparison, in particular, because people had doubts about his college tape, and he wasn't the statistical production wasn't there at Wyoming.
Completion percentage. Yep.
I still think that while this is not meant to be a knock on Levis, this is more of I don't think there's any human on planet Earth that is the size and speed and strength of Josh Allen.
Yeah,
like, I think their arms are very similar. I think the arm talent and the strength and the ability to just flick it and have it fly off the TV screen for like multiple seconds,
power from nowhere,
is awesome, and I think that's comparable. But I don't like when Josh Allen breaks out of the pocket and makes a 6'5", 280-pound defensive end fall off of him like a fly. That is not a thing that any other human can do. So I don't think it's fair to ask Will Levis to sort of have that level of athletic ability running around. But again, like progress to me is getting out of the play that might give you some pressure, which we saw that was certainly some things he was working on against Pittsburgh. Getting rid of the football a little bit earlier. There's a couple times in that game where he stepped into the pocket and maybe held onto the ball a little bit too long and took the hit and took a sack. It's not. I'm not blaming him for sacks. I'm just saying he's been faced with a situation of being under pressure, and there's a chance he's going to be under pressure a few more times this season.
You think so?
Based on the level of protection he's going to get. And so I think learning how to throw it away quicker, take the loss on the down, protect his body a little bit better, because I think he's out there just like, I'm 22, I'm built like Captain America, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Yeah. And he plays like that, which is a good
24,
thing.
By the way,
24, whatever. He
plays oldest quarterback in the division somehow.
he plays like that, and that's a great thing you want, but it's a fine line. And so for me, with progress, it's about like when you're under pressure, I would define progress as like just that split second quicker, better decision to protect your body and get the ball away. I don't have as many problems about some of the decisions he made throwing the football. Like I know on that fourth down, taking the shot to Burks, it felt like that was probably the right read. If you go back and rewatch it, the interception,
I totally disagree. That's the one throw in that game where I think it was a poor decision. I think that's just a rookie mistake.
Okay. I mean, I'm just saying I'm under the impression that maybe, to your point, and this is where you might be right, and I need to adjust what I'm saying, is that was the proper read within the confines of the offense and the defense. Maybe it's not the right decision in that moment.
In a vacuum, it's a perfectly fine. In a vacuum, it's a perfectly fine decision to make. And we actually broke this down, shameless plug, in our Will Levis film session with James Foster, who is the best in town doing this. So you don't have to take my word for it; take his word for it. We talked about this earlier this week. It in a vacuum is a fine decision to make, and that's a matchup he identified pre-snap. Knew he'd have the guy one-on-one. Wanted to give his guy a chance to go get the ball. Fine. Situationally, you have to know. It's fourth down. It's the end of the game. You may not get the ball back with a chance to score. You have to score. The actual technical, and we don't know for sure. The Titans could be different, but in general, on that play with that concept, the first read is that Phillips look on the inside and breaking route on the right hand side. He should have looked there. He didn't. It's you can't kill the guy for it. He's going to make mistakes. He's played 2 games, right? He's played 2 games.
So that's another point though. Like progress is, in the moment, adapting the read to be off script to some degree. I'm using that loosely here,
right?
But to match the situation, right? It's about matching the situation.
Situational football. Yep.
And so when you on a fourth down read that maybe is correct based on like your scientific execution of the read, but you have to process it faster and move to something else. That's the same thing as knowing exactly where the blitz is coming from pre-snap and being prepared to throw the ball right at where the blitz is coming from, shifting your protection to see where the mismatch is on the defensive line and shift your protection pre-snap and then understanding. And again, like he's shown flashes of this where like a guy's on his ankles, he can just flick it down the field. Like that's an incredible skill. it doesn't mean you want him doing that every time. So I think, to me, progress is about like he's already been shown so much talent that you just want to continually see the speed of the game move up for him to be able to process those situational things even further. And like, I know that's super nuanced and in the weeds on how to make a quarterback better from week to week, but I want to see that stuff speed up this week for him a little bit. And I think he will be able to. I'm not sure if Tampa will be able to pressure him the same way, but I'm not sure if the offensive line is going to protect him very much. So,
and so more tangibly, an example of progress would be him being put in that situation again and finding the underneath look and living to see another set of downs, right? One thing that has been on my mind, I was trying to think back earlier this week to August and July when we were watching him through training camp. You and I were there a lot of the days, seeing the things that we feel like, okay, that you can tell he's working on this, the footwork, the mechanics, the, feathering the ball, all these things that in his first two starts, we've identified as, wow, look at these things that we were talking about him working on in the summer. And now you can see tangible examples of him doing it on Sundays on the field. That's great. That's awesome. I was trying to figure out, well, what else were we looking at for him that were either areas of that needed improvement or areas of strength for him? Like, what haven't we seen, right? That's what I was trying to go back and think about. And the number one thing that I think we haven't seen from him, and this is not all his fault, this involves the rest of the team as well. We talked a lot in August about how when they're doing 11s and they're doing 7s in practice at training camp, this guy really thrives in the red zone. We've not seen him do that yet because the Titans haven't been in the red zone much. In his first start, he just skipped the red zone entirely, which is epic and awesome, and I have no issue.
They were there plenty against Pittsburgh, but that is an elite red zone defense.
Exactly. So we saw it some from, but if you go back and look drive by drive, and this was what surprised me because I was in the same page as you. It's like, well, they were there 3 or 4 times. Actually, it's kind of deceiving. When you go and look at the technical red zone, which is inside 20, they weren't there much, but they were inside 25 4 times.
5 times.
5 times. Excuse me. Okay, 5 times. Yeah. So they were there a bunch. We're right on the doorstep, and he didn't get a ton of opportunities to actually throw the ball down there. It was a lot of plays that were kind of taken out of his hands. There were a handful, but I want to see more against a less phenomenal red zone defense, like you said, which this week's not that week. Where the Bucs are, I think they're first in the league, allowing the fewest points on average per drive that gets into the red zone. So if he does it this week, then big thumbs up from me.
Yeah.
But in general, let's see him operate in the red zone. We know he's got the cannon. We know he can push the ball downfield. The red zone, you can't do that. To shorten field, the defenders have a lot less space to cover. You got to hit the guys underneath and slice and dice. Let's see him do that, not just in August, but on Sundays.
Timmy says, Will Levis is going to be better than Justin Herbert. Well, considering Justin Herbert has got like the 3rd most yards in the history of the NFL in his first 3 seasons, that's quite a high bar to clear. So
I like to imagine Timmy making that face in his profile picture when he says that.
And let's hope he's right, because that'd be great for content.
Sure.
So here's what's interesting about your like, as you're talking, I'm trying to think back to August as well.
Right.
And I'm like, fumbled snaps is kind of a quick one that just comes to mind, and like he's clearly kind of handled that. One of the things that I was trying to come up with, like, what is the one thing that truly and this is not a victory lap here, but like, I think the first day of practice, I looked over at you and maybe on the show with Zach, and I said, like, he is ahead of Malik Willis, guys. Like, he is better than Malik Willis.
Yep.
And so I've always been a little higher on Will Levis than the average Tennessee fan, I think, in general, and maybe even the media. Did I expect
you think higher than the average Tennessee fan?
Okay, sure, for sure.
You think?
But one of the things that going back and trying to like remember all the pages of notes and commentaries that we've done through that period of time, I want to say it's sort of like the over the middle between the hashes, not vertical, but those types of throws, like the one that was both the interception at the end of the game, but also the beautiful pass from his own end zone to DeAndre Hopkins, where he puts it over the defensive player's shoulder on sort of like this up vertical bending route.
Seam routes and in breakers are what we're looking for.
Yeah, right? and that's also what you have to be very good at in the red zone.
Yes,
so I think that particular throw, that intermediate throw into traffic, where it's anticipation, it's timing, it's arm strength, it's throwing, like, it's not throwing a receiver open. it's throwing to like a quadrant of the receiver. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's outside top right, it's outside top left, it's bottom low left, it's bottom low right.
Have you ever heard of a witch nipple quarterback?
A witch nipple quarterback.
Where the quarterback asks the receiver, which nipple do you want it on? Like that's the precision I've heard this referred to before, and I think it's hilarious, and I put it in my arsenal because that's what a truly elite accuracy quarterback is. They're a witch nipple quarterback. That's what it needs to be.
Yo, dog, which nipple you want? And
exactly.
and like so having watched Aaron Rodgers for 16 years, like
that's a witch nipple quarterback.
Aaron Rodgers is the most witch nipple quarterback I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like that dude literally if the receiver is just ahead of him, he's going to go up that direction. Or if the safety's closing in on a breaking route, he's going to go down and low. Like I've never seen anybody do it like him. And that's kind of what you're talking about. Like, let's see a little bit more touch, accuracy, arm strength, whatever it is on the play that is needed in the red zone, but in particular over the middle in the intermediate passing route. I think that's something that I'd like to see. And that speaks right to your red zone conversation. So I think otherwise it's just continue to manage the game, put the team in the position to win, make smart decisions. Okay, here's one. Don't do that stupid shit when you're getting sacked throwing the football backwards. How about that? Let's not do that one again.
He saw Deshaun do it and is like, write that down.
Let's not have the total moment of brain shutdown, because that one was like, I'm like, dude. And you could see it on, like, I think he was even processing, like, oh, I should not have done that.
yeah. It's like in a movie where the record scratches and it's like, how did we get here? This was a poor decision.
I think taking, there was only one really of those in like 2 games, honestly. And so I'm not.
Which, if you compare to Malik Willis, like that's kind of
every
thing
play.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy. I'm content to move on. The one last thing I was thinking about when you were explaining all of that, about how you want to see the in-breaking routes, you want to see the seam routes, you want to see him be a witch nipple quarterback operating between the numbers. It's funny because with Marcus, that was we've covered every spectrum, every portion of this spectrum with Titans quarterbacks with the last 3 guys. Because with Marcus, it was a guy that his bread and butter coming out was like, this guy's got great accuracy. He can throw those balls in between the numbers really, really well. Outside the numbers, his arm strength, like, he's just not pushing the ball downfield, and outside the numbers are not his forte. With Ryan Tannehill, he comes in, it's like, oh, look at this guy's also competent in the middle of the field, and he's competent pushing the ball downfield and outside the numbers. Now Will Levis is like, this guy can push the ball downfield all day long. He loves to throw outside the numbers. Now let's see him go inside the numbers. Let's see those seam routes. Let's see the in breakers. And to be fair, like, that's a good thing, in my opinion. Pushing the ball downfield and throwing outside the numbers is the harder thing to do in general, as long as you don't just truly, like, suck. If your accuracy is horrible, then that's a different story. I don't think his accuracy is horrible.
You can't be you can't be Joe Milton, where you're not accurate down the field, but you also don't know how to throw a changeup.
Exactly.
And he's shown some ability to throw the changeup, in particular around the backfield. He's done a good job of, like, grounding the ball when there's no play. He also threw it to Tajay Spears on one play where he should have grounded it. So again, there's plenty to work on, but again, protecting his body, anticipating red zone intermediate throws. I think that's kind of all stuff that I would be like, this is how I would define progress that is deeper than just like, oh, he threw for 250 and 3 touchdowns and they won the game, which of course we'll all say is progress, but also Tampa Bay is not nearly as good as Pittsburgh is. Now they are good at a couple of things, but which we're going to get to in a second. So this is going to tie into the Tampa Bay game. And this is my fallacy I want to present. We'll get to some AFC South stuff. And Zach sort of is, and I have not pushed back on Zach as much about this because the stats and the data have not been there as prevalently, let's say, is that the right word? Overwhelmingly as they are when I sat down to look at this matchup and look at this game. There's a few things that Tampa Bay, I think they've got a lot of different weapons. They're using Cade Otton as a tight end in an impressive way. They got 2 receivers in Goodwin and Evans that are one-on-one, very dangerous against the Titans secondary. They've been targeted more than 60 times. They got a running back who's been targeted like 35 times. They've got a lot of different pieces, and Baker Mayfield's playing better football in the last couple of games, even though they've lost 4 straight. They have held teams to 70 yards or less rushing 5 times. So a very, very good Tampa Bay rushing defense. But I want to focus on the other side of the ball, which is where I think the fallacy is now that the stats are here.
Okay.
In the last 4 games, the Tennessee Titans' average rushing defense the average performance of the most basic stats, not the DVOA, expected this,
just yards.
32 carries per game for 160 yards rushing per game. That is the last 4 games of rushing defense for the Tennessee Titans, following like a 20-game stretch of not allowing somebody over 100 yards. 4 straight games where the average is 32 carries for 160 yards. They are 30th in the NFL in quarterback pressures. They are 29th in the NFL. This is all Pro Football reference. 54 pressures, 30th in the NFL, 29th in the NFL in pressure percentage, 18% of dropbacks. They have 14 hurries the entire season. 14 quarterback hurries, according to Pro Football Reference. 28th in the NFL.
I feel like 9 of those came in week 1, too.
Yeah. 4.8% of a hurry rate, which means every time the quarterback drops back 100 times, you're going to pressure him 5 times. I'm not sure if you guys know how percentages work. 30th.
Good math.
30th in the NFL. 30, which means like they're going to get like
how many teams are there? 32, right?
So they are
that's not great.
Their defense
they're bad.
It's not good. It's not good.
It's really bad. It's the most disappointing thing about this team this year.
And these are these ones I got from the Paul Karski podcast, which of course is on the 440 Sports Network. These are the last 4 games from the front 4, which is supposed to be the identity of the team.
Supposed to be
1 sack, 3 quarterback hits. Harold Landry with 3 pressures. Danico Autry with 6 pressures. Jeffrey Simmons with 6 pressures. Arden Key with 7 pressures. I'll add this to the list. This was not from Paul. They have 4 takeaways in their last 7 games. So they are not pressuring the quarterback with their best players. They are not stopping the run with their best players. They're not creating turnovers and havoc plays and tackles behind the line of scrimmage. They're not pressuring the quarterback. They're not hurrying the quarterback. They're not hitting the quarterback. And they're not stopping the run.
You know what's more frustrating
than that?
They're not
good at defense.
And do you know what that's infuriating? You know what's even more frustrating? I don't know why. I don't know. That's like, it's our job, right? To be able to say like, well, it's probably this, or maybe it's this. Braden, I don't know. This is like number 1. And it hit me this morning, actually. I'm glad you brought this up because I was listening to some other podcasts and Titans talk this morning. And it was actually Greg Cosell I was listening to a little bit. And he was talking about this, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I've been at the Titans facility a couple times this week, and I'm kicking myself for not asking more questions about it. Like, what can we identify what's going on here? And to the credit of others in the media pool, I saw from today, earlier this midday this morning, they asked some questions of guys like Arden Key, one in particular, and I don't know. I need to ask about the context of this. I don't know if you saw this. Arden Key was asked, I think by Terry McCormick, like, what do you guys need to do to set a better edge in the run game? And Arden just kind of shook his head and it's just next question. That's bizarre, but okay.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I think
going on?
I think there's been some bizarre answers. Not bizarre in like a like you have no clue what you're doing, but
no, it's just there's more. Clearly, there's something there that he wants to say that he can't, because there's a very easy generic answer there that you could give, and you don't want to give it.
What is generally okay? Traditionally in football, you bring in, and this is not about Will Levis, but like traditionally in football, you bring in a backup quarterback or a rookie quarterback. What's the phrase we all use? Simplify the offense, right? It's a phrase that you use. It can mean many things depending on your strengths and weaknesses.
I like where you're going with this.
To me, defense is at its best when it is fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fast and physical. Mm-hmm. How do you get to fast and physical on defense? Instincts and reaction, not thinking. It's about instincts, reaction, speed, physicality.
Yep.
It's see ball, get ball. Like you don't think. Defense is exclusively about muscle memory and instincts and reaction speed. And number 1, I don't think they are overly talented in the box behind that line.
And I know they're not overly talented.
And while Azeez Al-Shaair has played well and is a good player, they do not have, like, especially not like, I'm not saying Kevin Byard was good for this team this year, but just in general, to have the leadership, the knowledge where he's at. Like, right now, Amani Hooker has not, he's been fine. He's been okay. Elijah Molden's had some time where he's been good one play and then bad the next series, and then
they've not been elevating. Series. They've not been plus players.
But he plays in the box a lot. Jack Gibbons is what he is. I think he's extremely limited. So I think that the pieces that would play behind that group that would allow you to do stuff. We know they don't blitz. Like, to me, this is about simplifying all of it to make it fast. And I don't know what that like. I played offense growing up, so I don't know if that in because this Tampa Bay team does not run the football. I mean,
they can't. They're not good.
So like, I like Rachaad White, but they do not run the football particularly well. Now they protect the football. They don't turn the ball over very much. But like, you pressure Baker Mayfield, he will make mistakes.
Yep.
They've got to be simple and fast. And tell me how they do that on defense.
I already told you, Braden. I don't know. I will tell you this. We do know this defense for the past couple of seasons has been one of the more complex ones in the league. They were big in pioneering you could argue, revival, or maybe it's kind of a new thing. There's a debate about that behind the scenes. It's a very nerdy thing. In general, they've been a big part in the past couple of years of revivifying this idea of, let's not send guys on blitzes very often. We don't need to send more than 4. How about we just simulate the pressures, right? You hear this all the time with the Titans defense, simulated pressures. That complicates the defense tremendously. Guys need to know their responsibilities, and your responsibility changes when you are running simulated pressures, trying to simulated pressures are trying to have your cake and eat it too, which if you can do it, it's great. That's awesome. But when you can't, you don't have either. You neither have the cake nor get to eat it. And that's where the Titans are right now as a defense. They aren't eating the cake. They don't have the cake. And they need to slow it down and at least choose one of those two things, right? And so I'm with you. Maybe that means simplifying the scheme, the play calling. Maybe we do send some more pressure because we're just trying to allow these guys, like you said, to act instinctually, to act reactively, to act as fast as possible so they can get out there. And again, you use all the buzzwords you want: fly around on defense, play fast, play physical, play instinctive. It's important. And right now they're not doing that.
And I think what appeared to happen with the Steelers, in my opinion, is and I think there's another factor here that I'm going to get to in a second. And that is that I think Jeffrey Simmons and Denico Autry have been carrying a franchise for so long that they are just like mentally exhausted. So I think that they will never admit that, and that's not a thing that you get paid millions of dollars to overcome that, and that is what it is. But like, I don't know. Like, I just think that foursome up front has been asked to do so much heavy lifting for so long that maybe it's just like, who knows? But that's a different subject.
No, I agree.
I think the other thing that was so surprising about why Najee Harris and Warren were so successful running the football was that it was also so simple and direct.
Mm-hmm.
They went right at him, right between the tackles. They weren't doing a bunch of crazy weird shit. It was Najee Harris downhill at your face. And even Warren, for a smaller guy, Al Michaels couldn't talk enough about how Herbstreit, he's not a big guy, but look how physical he is between the tackles.
Right.
Like, they couldn't stop talking about that. And it's almost as if like the other team went a little simpler, and I don't blame him with Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada, because I don't think Matt Canada is very good. But even Matt Canada saw how to attack this team, which was to go right at him. Because if you can just get by Simmons and Autry, there's not a lot there to stop. And so to me, it's about simplifying and making it fast again. And maybe they don't have the pieces to do that with Gibbons and Alshire and
a linebacker they don't. A linebacker they just flat don't.
I don't know. I don't know.
They need to get healthy. They need to get healthy in the secondary. We heard Roger McCreary say today that he's absolutely playing this game. Yeah. Great, fantastic, huge news. You can get one of the UDFA guys off the field. I think it'll be a lot less of Eric Gary. You'll still see Trey Avery out there, as long as Sean Murphy-Bunting isn't playing, which it's from what I'm hearing, it's probably not very likely. He had some kind of surgical operation on his thumb, or according to the injury report, thump, earlier this week. And so
excuse me.
He got his thump fixed, which is great news, but
never like to have a thump problem.
A broken thump is a huge issue. You can't play good football with a broken thump.
I think Fulton, ironically, through all of this,
now he's playing good.
Christian Fulton is he's the most consistent player on the defense through all of this. And
Great
so
timing.
maybe maximize that a little bit more. Because again, to this week, if you're going to blitz a little bit more, if you're going to make it a little bit more dynamic, well, you better be able to guard Mike Evans down the field in man-to-man coverage, and maybe that's where Fulton comes in. Maybe he's with Godwin. Maybe you can use less because Fulton is now playing better and McCreary's healthy. So you might have an advantage.
Fulton, by the way, I'm glad you brought him up because this is the heat check for him in my mind. This game, we've been hearing the whispers about, which have grown into a full inside voice. At this point, hey, Christian Fulton been playing some good ball recently, and he has, and credit to him for that.
Yep.
However, it's been against some bad receiving cores and some bad quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield's no world beater, but he does have some fantastic weapons on the outside, and he is, for my money, the best quarterback the Titans have faced for a couple of weeks in a row now, since London, really. And so so this is the heat check for me. If Christian Fulton's resurgence, if his backness is real, then let's see it against this team when you are, again, you're undermanned in the secondary. You're expected to be able to carry the load. Do it this week, and then I'll start to buy it.
I think that's right. And we've got a couple of questions here, and we'll get to them momentarily because I'm actively going to look up Will Levis's split stats here while trying to also continue with your conversation. I agree that Baker Mayfield has played fairly efficient football. He's a few games where he's like 72, 73% completion percentage. He's had a couple of games, and to your point, I think you can rattle him quickly, but I think he's got some good weapons.
Are you talking about Levis or Baker?
Baker Mayfield. So
Baker,
I'm trying to answer your
there we go. Yep.
your question, and while I'm pulling up his while I'm pulling up his split stats here. Okay, so they asked, and I want to get to this question because I think it's interesting. Timmy says, "What's his floor and what's his ceiling?" And I think that the short answer to that is that it is still a very large gap between the floor and the ceiling. But
we've not found the floor yet. I'm here to tell you, we've not seen the floor. No,
I agree. But the fact that it is extremely wide, that the ceiling is very high and that the floor is still very low is I think where you want to be on a guy playing in his third game. Like you want there to still be potential for an extremely high ceiling because his talent is the same thing we saw it on the. But he says, is there any chance to let him throw the ball more on first down? And so my first thought is I think they've done that more than you think.
They have.
He has 24 pass attempts on first down. He has 25 pass attempts on second down. He has 18 pass attempts on third down. His completion percentage on second down is by far the best, 76%, 3 of his touchdowns. The point is
where the play action shots come, right? That naturally that's going to be the case.
Well, but his they threw the ball on first down with play action on their own 8-yard line to start the fourth quarter.
They did do this
on that smash route to Burks.
Yep.
The point is they are throwing the ball just as much on first down as they are on second down. He's a little bit more efficient on second down, which to your point, I think is feeding off the stacking of plays. And third down is by far the down he throws the ball the least. So basically they're letting him throw the ball on first down more than any other time, basically. So, or as much as any other time. So, and that's not to be a smartass. I just think I recall
Braden thinks you're an idiot, Timmy. I don't know what you're going to make of that.
All of Tim. What's one of the things we were begging about Tim Kelly in the offseason when he took the offense over was throw the ball more on first down. And they've thrown the ball a lot more on first down. So, do you agree? Any disagreement on any of those questions at all?
Not really. No, my biggest point there is that we've not seen the floor yet. We're going to find it eventually, and I'm very curious to see what it is.
Listen, it could happen this weekend because the Bucs are really, really good at stopping the run, and that could force the Titans into some one-dimensional stuff. But
I'm going to argue it better not happen this weekend. Unless the Bucs secondary changes the game entirely, they just wake up like we saw what CJ Stroud did to the secondary. Seven. Well, it will be 7 days ago by Sunday. Like you need to be able to throw against this team. And if this is Will Levis's worst game, then that's not. There was an article written at BroadwaySportsMedia.com by our friend Justin Mello, who his opinion is valid. I disagree with the severity of it. The idea that there will be some doubts creeping in if this is his worst game. I agree that he should be able to operate efficiently and effectively against this Buccaneers secondary. However, there's also like Vita Vea exists against Aaron Brewer, who's like a full-size golden doodle less in weight than him. 2 very good
linebackers. Like they are not going to run the ball on Tampa, which means the game becomes more predictable for Tampa's defense and therefore more complicated for a rookie quarterback. Here's my one thing on this floor ceiling thing is I don't want anyone to overreact to any ceiling or floor at any point during this year. I think you have to look back at all 8 or 9 starts, however many he gets, and you have to evaluate the body of work. It's like a college football playoff resume.
Yep.
You are not your best win and you are not your worst loss. You are your body of work. And it is all about small pieces of progress throughout the course of the season to put together a body of work that makes people excited and showing the talent to come back next year, which I think so far in 2 games he's done. So, again, not hating on the interception, for example. I think that's stupid to rip on that interception. Could he have done a better job? Sure. He's in his second game on the road against Pittsburgh in a situation where he has to throw the ball. So, excuse me. All right. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, our title sponsors. Make sure you support those good and amazing local businesses there, of course. Sinkers Beverages, Uber Eats. You can search Uber Eats and have them deliver the booze directly to your door. They will drive so you can drink.
Bingo.
And huge walk-in beer fridge, great wine selection, great prices. They will beat almost any price anywhere in the market, and they are the reigning 2022 liquor store of the year in Nashville, Tennessee. So go check out Sinkers. Kingston Group, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Make sure you just have a conversation with them before you make any big decisions about your house or future house or past house, whatever it is. Just talk to the Kingston Group first, and they will absolutely help guide you through that process. And they're the best in the business. It's why my family uses both Sinkers and the Kingston Group. So go check them out. Okay. Some AFC South stuff here. Indianapolis and New England, of course, will start at 8:30 a.m. The Colts are Colts are a 2-point favorite, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Houston and Cincinnati. Houston is at Cincinnati, coming off 470 yards passing by CJ Stroud.
Fascinating game. Fascinating game.
Utterly fascinating. Cincinnati has kind of started to find its footing a little bit here after the injury and after the loss of the Titans to Burrow's
Titans
calf.
Should be glad about when they caught that Cincinnati team.
No question.
They should be happy about that.
Cincinnati, a 7-point favorite, and honestly, a really fascinating game. Jacksonville at home, a 3-point underdog at home to San Francisco. Clearly a chance for the rest of the division to gain a game on Jacksonville. How good are the Jaguars? How strong is their hold on the division? And how much growth have the Colts and the Texans made in this offseason / now first half of the season?
A lot of good questions there. With Jacksonville, I am fascinated by that game because it is the put up or shut up game for Jacksonville. A lot has been made about how, hey, they've won 5 in a row and they're still being kind of undersold. That's going to happen when you're on your bye. So naturally, people have kind of forgotten about them the past 13, 14 days. But they have won 5 or 6 in a row now. I think 6 and 2. Yeah, 5 in a row. This is the game where I think if they win, they're going to be talked about as a top 3, top 4 team in the AFC. And if they lose, it's going to be like, okay, this is a middling team that's competing for the playoffs, but they got some work to do. And they still the reason why I think a lot of even more nerdy folks like you and I, Braden, aren't talking big game about Jacksonville this year is because, yeah, they've won the games and some of the numbers look good. When you watch the games, they just still have not clicked. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about it where it's not really dominant in any aspect of the game. They got a really nice run defense. And when the offense is clicking, they have some really nice drives, but it's sporadic. It's not consistent enough for me to say, like, this team is really dangerous. I'm happy to change my mind about that if they go up against a San Francisco team that is healthier after the bye, that, the 3-game skid for San Francisco, big game for them. Obviously, I would argue that San Francisco is the much more desperate team in this matchup because they have lost 3 in a row and because their reputation's on the line, because the NFC, there's so much opportunity there. You can't squander it by getting closer and closer to, if they're 5-5 through 10, what a disaster. You win 5, lose 5 for San Francisco. So they're desperate for this game. But that's what I take away from that game. With Indy and Houston, man, this Houston game is fascinating to me. And not to go full,
Well, let me go back to Jacksonville.
Sorry, not to burst ahead here. Let's talk.
No, you're good. You're good. Because I think they're all like. What's interesting to me is I'm almost more focused on the defenses for all 3 of them, because you're not going to learn a lot about the Colts' future with Gardner Minshew. You might be able to learn about.
You're going to learn none. I mean,
you can learn about the scheme. The offensive line has gotten better. They've added some weapons around just Jonathan Taylor. But so I'm kind of looking at the defenses. And Jacksonville, excuse me.
Jacksonville's defense has been the most impressive part of that team for me this year. Because I came into the year saying this is going to be a bad defense. Hand up, I was wrong. I'm wrong.
They are not getting sacks. But all those numbers we just rattled off, all those numbers I rattled off about the Titans in terms of pressures, quarterback pressures, hurries, percentages, all that stuff. Like they are one of the best teams in the league. They have 86 pressures. The Titans have 54 pressures. The Titans are one of the worst. The Jaguars are our top 10 team in that category. When you look at hurries, remember what I said, Titans 14 hurries in this entire season, down to 28th. Jacksonville 4th, 37 hurries. That's 3 times the number. Like they are pressuring the quarterback at a significantly higher rate than the Tennessee Titans are, for example, which is something that if I'm a Titans fan, I am very disappointed in. Now, Jacksonville has invested a lot of assets in their front seven. And so that I would expect some improvement. But the defense for Jacksonville, because I agree with you, I'm Trevor Lawrence guy. Zach doesn't think so. That's okay for us to disagree on that. But
Zach's wrong. That's fine.
With all those weapons, I still think Trevor Lawrence is like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but it has not hit the thing yet.
Nope.
Like they haven't hit their thing yet. And here's what I'm concerned about. Like either the 6-2 is fake and they're not as good as their record indicates, or they figured out a way to get to 6-2 without being at their best, and their best is yet to come. And that could be scary.
Scary. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
We'll find out this weekend. Weekend.
Can we talk about the Houston-Cincy game? Because
I know you're salivating at that.
I know I am jonesing because this is I on paper the better game is Jacksonville and San Francisco. Totally agreed. I'll be watching both of these games very intently. The Houston game, not to get too far ahead of myself on today, and give me 30 seconds to kind of go off the track here, because I have had folks ask me when I fill in on this wonderful program. Love when you fill in. But why should I listen to you again later on the same day? Here's why. First of all, I don't talk about the same things on the show later today at Boomboss. By the way, 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You should check it out.
Which, by the way, we try hard to do. Like
we try hard to do. So, like, you're not, if you want everything, and why wouldn't you want all of my thoughts on this team? I mean, obviously, you gotta catch both shows. But we also spend a lot of time, and to segue this back into this game, we spend a lot of time on Thursdays. We're very proud of a segment we called the Best Bet Gauntlet. We've been betting for 2 seasons now, over 300 game sample size. We take it very seriously, JT and I. We are the closest to professional bettors you can be without being professional bettors. We're betting at a 58%.
And you put money on all these games?
We put our own real money on all of these games,
good.
And we make folks money. 58% over 300 game sample size is professional level, so we're very proud of that.
And so tune into the Hot Read podcast at 5:30 live.
Tune into that. So we've got that out of the way. That's the plug. Check it out. Now, for this game on this show, this is a number that has surprised a lot of people, because Houston, coming off of that big win against Tampa Bay, you're thinking this team is okay, they're at 500, they're at 4-4 in the AFC. Their offense is capable of scoring 40 points on any given Sunday. CJ Stroud playing incredible ball. This is a competitive team. Then the number comes out. They're on the road in Cincy. It's a touchdown. Everybody's like, whoa. Are we really ready to crown?
Lay the points.
You think so?
Yes.
So it's okay. So that there's a lot of debate. Pros are very split on this week. This is, I mean, in a maybe I would argue a bigger way than the Jacksonville game. Like it's a put up or shut up game for them. For Houston, I think this is a litmus test for them. This is a very real competitor they're going up against in a difficult environment on the road. A Bengals team that's hitting their stride. This is where, when you're trying to make that leap from fun and frisky team to team you got to take seriously, that's a difficult gap to bridge. And this is the kind of game you have to win to prove to people, hey, we're not the fun and frisky team. We're the gamers, and we'll cover for you, but we're not going to win a lot of games.
They're not good. They're not good enough. They're not good enough to do that yet.
I don't think so either.
They're just not.
I don't think so either. And so that's, but we may be if they're going to prove us wrong, they're going to do it in this game. And if they win this game outright, you and I are going to be eating our words on Monday, because it's going to be like, all right, never mind.
Cincinnati -7. Cincinnati.
I'm with you.
Here's the other thing. Here's the other thing the Vegas is trying to get you to do. Take Houston.
Yes, they're
the reason they put
Houston, 100%.
They want you to be on Houston by putting up that number immediately following a 500-yard passing game by their star young quarterback. Also, not 100% sure how healthy the receiving core is, or how, I think Damian Pierce is banged up. You got Nico Collins banged up.
Did you see their injury report on Wednesday, Braden?
It's a lot
53 players on the roster. 23 of them were on the injury report. I mean, Titans fans think they've had it bad the past couple of years. That's some all-time stuff.
But their receiving core, though, Xavier Hutchinson is like their 5th receiver. They have Tank Dell's had a nice rookie season. Dalton Schultz has been a major target, and it's so funny to be this deep into a year and have never seen them as a division opponent.
Right.
For the Titans, they have a lot of pieces. They have a lot of pieces, and I think they got the right coach. So I think there's going to be tons of progress. They've already shown it. Cincinnati is on a different planet than Houston. So
I agree.
that's kind of why I think Vegas, based on what they did last week, like, oh, Cincinnati's coming off a big, they played well against Buffalo, big win, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Houston, tons of points. Like, why is it 7? Like, they want you to go Houston. So I'm guilty of this in the college football world. We're going to talk about this in a second. I think Vegas is begging you to bet Georgia and Alabama. They sound like sucker bets this week because they're both the lowest point spreads basically Georgia's ever had all season. And I'm going to be the sucker because I'm taking both of them. So
yep, an itty bitty little morsel of betting advice. You got to play the hindsight game with this kind of matchup, right? Because Houston was going to lose that game against Tampa Bay if it weren't for a 40-second miracle drive down the field, very impressive drive where they win on a last-second touchdown. If they lose that game, this number's what, 4, 5? It's now inflated up to 7. They're begging you to take Houston.
Here's my gambling advice: don't gamble on the NFL. It's
totally disagree. Terrible advice. Bet on the NFL and bet on the best bet gauntlet. College is so much harder to bet. College is so much
more predictable. College is so much
no. We could spend an hour on this. You're so wrong about this, Braden. College kids are so much less predictable than NFL players, professionals.
That I'm not going to disagree with you with, but that's why you bet the coaches and the situation, not the teams. Here's the problem: college games are not about the outcomes. That's the difference. In the NFL, the outcomes wild so vary because the teams are exactly the same. Like almost every roster is the same in the NFL, and in college, compared to college,
right,
where the rosters are wildly different, and it's not ever about the outcome. It's about how the game plays out.
We could spend 20 minutes on this, but the funny bit of advice that's peeking through here, objectively, I'm saying you have to bet NFL. You're saying you have to bet college. The real advice here is don't bet what you don't know. Bet what you know.
That's right? Exactly. And I'm at and over the last 3 years, I'm at like 55% with college. Sounds like you're doing pretty well for the NFL.
Same deal with NFL. If we flip flopped, I'd be betting a cold 37% on college if you forced me to bet college every week.
Can we agree that you should never parlay anything? Can we agree with that?
Absolutely not. What? Take all the fun out of it? What are you talking about? Smart parlays exist.
Parlay is invented by the house statistically to take your money. That's
correct.
What
Correct. Because it's very hard to be smart with your parlays, but there is a way. And if you want to learn more, check out the Best Bet Gauntlet on the Hot Read podcast.
There you go. That's enough promotion. Good job. Go check, but you should go check it out.
I'm forcing all the promos in today. Let's move on.
No force. You got consent.
440 product. It's a 440 product.
You got consent, big guy.
I appreciate that.
Real quickly here. We're not going to talk a lot of SEC football. Go to Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. We'll react a little bit more to this on Monday. But basically, Alabama, 10-point favorite on the road against Kentucky. You've got Georgia, 10-point favorite at home against Ole Miss. They both are essentially clinching divisions in these games by and large.
It's not like you're saying take the points in these games.
I'm laying the points because I think they are ready.
So you're walking into the sucker bet.
I'm taking the sucker bet.
Okay. All right. Fair. Sometimes you got to do it. I feel that.
I don't think Kentucky has a quarterback that's playing well enough to challenge Alabama. Essentially, maybe there's a letdown, but Alabama's playing its best football of the season.
Where is that game?
It's in Lexington.
Okay.
I think Georgia could be challenged very similarly to that of Missouri because they have a very similar offense and style. Missouri and Ole Miss, they kind of are going to do the same things: run the quarterback, great running back, hit the receivers down the field, take deep shots. The game plan is going to be the same. So I could see them playing with Georgia, but they don't have both of these teams. Kentucky and Ole Miss will lose the line of scrimmage battle. They're going to lose the line of scrimmage battle. The only thing I could see happening is Kentucky pressuring Jalen Milroe a little bit, but because that's happened to him the entire season. But I don't see how either of them
catch him. Good luck catching him, right?
Bingo. The Michael Vick stuff kicks in at that point. Like his acceleration is off the charts. So I like the two favorites to sort of hold serve. If you're asking me to pick an upset, ironically, it might be Georgia at home, not Alabama on the road, which is weird.
That's weird.
But that's because I think Ole Miss is that good, and I think Georgia's looking ahead to Tennessee next week. They just came off a big time game against Missouri.
Okay,
maybe there's an emotional letdown for Georgia. Tennessee, Missouri, I have no clue. There's a reason it's a pick 'em. Essentially,
is it a pick 'em? I was wondering what the line is on
Tennessee. Was favored by 1, then it was a pick 'em. Then I think they got favored again. Like basically, it's who do you think's going to win the game? And honestly, if Tennessee plays its best version, they can win. They're the better team. but Missouri's been more consistent. And if Missouri
Right.
plays its regular version, then that team wins the game. So they're at home. Tennessee scored 60 plus in this game 2 years in a row. Dropping a 60
I feel
burger,
confident betting that's not going to happen.
It will not, but you can bet Eli Drinkwitz has taken it personally, the head coach at Missouri. So I think there was some bad blood at the end of this game. So I honestly have no clue what to do with this game. But just here's my main point and lesson about Tennessee, Missouri. Both programs belong in the conversation, like as sort of the next up in the SEC, if they can continue this. Like Georgia and Alabama are the premier programs in the SEC. LSU's kind of on the next tier. Tennessee and Missouri now belong on that tier to be in that conversation because they consistently have shown it. But most importantly, this is a playoff game next year. Next year, 12-team playoff. Winner stays with 2 losses. Loser goes to 3 losses. It is a playoff elimination game next season. And if you think this year is fun, imagine if there was a playoff spot on the line.
Yeah.
So this is a playoff game next year in the SEC, and it's why we're expanding the playoff. Is this game?
Yep.
Two very good teams that are playing better than they've played all season. They're playing really good football despite some outcomes. Quarterbacks are playing really well. Offenses have evolved into these really dynamic groups, and they got some bad blood, and they're both 2-loss teams. And I think it's a beautiful college football game. It's going to end up with a football bouncing off some guy's face mask and on the final drive, and something crazy is going to happen, and that team's going to win. But really, this is a playoff game next year, and I think that's what's important with this one. So just enjoy it, honestly.
Sure.
I'm going to try to get my daughters.
Where is that game? Is that one in?
It's in Missouri.
It's in Missouri. Okay. Yeah. With those first 2, with the Georgia Bama games you mentioned, it sounds like based on what you said alone, it's a perfect opportunity to maybe lay the points for the full game, take the underdog first half kind of deal where it's kind of busted open second half. Which I
think for Ole Miss, that's it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, which is a pretty common thing, I think, in college. With the Tennessee game, that's the one that I find most fascinating thing for obvious reasons. I love the playoff game angle. I love the angle of Drinkwitz taking this personally. I think it certainly does not help Tennessee that Missouri was not this close, maybe like this close last week in a really big game against Georgia and couldn't quite get it done.
As close as you get to Georgia. So
right. They got within earshot, and it has to sting a little bit for them. And so I think that they've got some anger to they got some steam to let off in this game. So where are you leaning? You said you don't know. If I
think Missouri's the better team.
I think
the more consistent team, the more complete team, and the more balanced team, and they are at home. I think if Tennessee plays its
Tennessee lives and dies by Joe Milton, like it.
Well, really... the beauty of Tennessee is that they've evolved past that. Like they're no longer asking him to be the Hendon Hooker, where you just ask the quarterback to do everything. They're now running with the ball with him. They've got a 3-headed monster at running back. They run the football there. Missouri's pretty good against the run, but I think Tennessee's going to run the football. So I think what I think is great about both these programs and why I like this game so much is that both programs have evolved and progressed as like big picture programs from the beginning of the season. So while, Tennessee lost to Florida and Missouri lost on a bad play to LSU, and they both lost to Bama and Georgia recently, like they are still playing amongst the best football in the conference. And it's because Tennessee's offense has evolved. They are now not just asking the quarterback to stand back there and sling it. And so they've added new wrinkles to it. They're running the football with the quarterback. They're asking him to be like 21, 22 passes, not 37 passes. And so Tennessee's changed. And I think that's a sign of a good coach. And obviously the development of all those pieces for Missouri has happened this year. And that's the sign of Eli Drinkwitz knowing when to step back, hire a coordinator, and let the coordinator go to work. So they've progressed as programs. And I find that the trajectory of the offseason and the conversation around both these programs it could be decided in this game. So I just think there's so many layers. It's so interesting. And I think, unfortunately, there's a very good chance that Alabama just wins the whole stupid thing again. Like
you've been on this week, and I hate you for it.
The 1 year that everyone's like, no, it's wide open. Someone else is going to do it. Like, of course, it ends up being Nick Saban in Alabama. So
I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong as well.
Right.
But just ask my wife. It happens all the time. Thank you, Easton, for filling in. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. Thanks to all you guys. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Share that show. Tell somebody about the product Mondays and Thursdays every single week at 1:00 Central Standard God's Time. And of course, please give us a subscription over there on the 440 Sports YouTube page. You got individual game previews for all those SEC games we just talked about if you want to go deeper. And of course, other great shows like the Hot Read podcast and Football and Other F Words and a variety of other great shows. So go check them all out. Thank you, Easton.
Thank you, Braden. It's been a blast.
All right. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you on Monday.